Pranakasha live stream.
Hi folks, this is Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Josh Michael Irwin, super talented screenwriter, cinematographer, and filmmaker.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. So I noticed you have a Imdb page, in fact.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And it's like, I saw that, I'm taking a look at it right now, and it said that you did Ghost Ship, Living Colors, and Agent of New Worlds. Excuse me. Are those all Star Trek fan films, or I know the last one is
Ghost Ship and Agent of New Worlds are definitely fan films. Living Colors is an indie film that I worked on in, I think, early 2017 with another filmmaker named Alicia Hayes, and that's actually where I met Tori Archer, who's in a lot of our fan films.
okay.
And that's just sort of a drama indie film that we shot, and I think it's been on Amazon Prime and some other places for a while.
Oh, cool.
Interesting film. So yeah, it's been kind of a broad range of work, starting out in indie film and then migrating to doing a lot of Star Trek fan films, but never really completely giving up on the indie film part of it. I did another film. I shot two other films this year. No, three other films this year that were not Star Trek fan films.
Oh, wow.
One with a full-length feature film that is going to have Highlander actor Adrian Paul in it. And then one is another one's going to Netflix and is kind of a spooky thriller, and then another one is going to be a romantic comedy.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. So you've been pretty busy then.
Oh, it's been probably 2021 is probably the busiest year that I ever had, and it was nice because I didn't do almost anything in 2020. 2020 was, the vast majority of 2020 was spent working on just Interlude. So it's nice to branch out and do a lot of other projects.
Oh, that's cool. So are those local productions, or did you have to go out? Because you're in the Midwest, right?
Yeah, I'm in Arkansas.
Arkansas, okay.
Yeah, and I did a lot of traveling this year, more than I ever have.
Okay.
A lot of the Star Trek fan film stuff I worked on was in either Atlanta, Georgia, or in Kingsland, Georgia.
Okay.
And then I went to San Antonio, Texas for a week for a shoot. Oklahoma, went to Phoenix, Arizona, and shot a week in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
So I've been kind of all over the map. I would say for me, 2021 has been the year of the road trip.
Wow.
And that's been kind of the fun part about it, is to, go on the road with people you really care about and have fun making films.
Oh, that's cool. So San Antonio, I know well. So let me ask you, what time of year was it when you were in San Antonio?
It was the very end of the summer. So it was like
pretty hot then.
End of September.
Okay.
So it was very, very hot, and we weren't in town so much as we were out in nature.
Okay.
Because we were doing this horse movie. And even though it wasn't a Western, it felt like a Western at times. And one of the other guys on the crew was like, who had worked on a lot of Westerns, he's like, this is what it's like if you're doing a Western. We were just out in the middle of nowhere with horses, moving around with cameras real fast. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was hard work, but we had a good time.
That's wild. Yeah, I know. My first taste of San Antonio was January 1st, 1997, where I arrived at Air Force Basic Training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
Nice.
And all I remember is like everybody that was there got sick at some point, because one day it could be like super cold and snowing, and the next day it could be like 70 degrees, and there was these giant swings of temperature, and like most of our bodies couldn't handle that.
It's like that in Arkansas a lot, where
really?
Yeah, so it's in the 70s right now here, and
Oh,
it's supposed to
wow.
be 15 a week from today. So
Okay.
yeah, that happens here a lot. It's weird.
Wow. And that's so is that a desert climate that you're in
It's it's
technically?
uh it's a very no, it's very humid. Uh
Oh.
it's kind of a foresty, hilly, I've always said that I'm a hillbilly because Arkansas is the Ozark Mountains, and that's actually where the Beverly Hillbillies were from, was northern Arkansas. So yeah, it's real foresty around here, really humid, really muggy. In the summer, it gets really hot and humid, and in the winter, it's really cold and humid. So
Oh,
yeah,
AKA snow.
lots of humidity. So
Huh. So that's interesting. So like it sounds like you're like totally breaking the old paradigm where like if you got to do film and stuff like that, you got to live in LA or New York. But
thank goodness for that, because when I finished film school in 2004, it was like, well, everyone was going to LA, that was just a given, and that's just not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to live there. I mean, the culture there just wasn't for me. I'm a guy from a small town in the middle of nowhere, and I kind of see the value in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of the movies that I make that aren't a Star Trek fan film are about a small town in the middle of nowhere.
okay.
So it's pretty easy to make a film about a small town in the middle of nowhere if you have plenty of them around you.
That's cool. Wow. So are you able to like divulge any details about those three projects you did, or is it all secret still?
One of them is it's kind of a spooky horror story type thing that I did with my friend Kevin McNamara. Now he does live in LA,
Okay.
and he wrote and directed one of the films, and it's pretty fun. Really talented actors in it. It's called
Mhm.
Hose, Hose. And it's
Hose, yeah.
like
Like
an actual
hose A
hose.
and hose B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not prostitutes.
Right.
So, but it's a fun movie, and we had a crazy time making it, but
Okay.
that's why you do it.
Okay.
And then one is called Wildfire, and it's been in the making for a couple of years. It shot some before the pandemic,
Okay.
paused while that was all going on, but had to work out all kinds of logistical issues anyway. And then this year we finished filming it, and so they're hopeful to have that through post-production pretty soon.
That's cool.
And then the third one, uh, I'm going to call it Love Bites, and it's
A
kind
vampire
of
movie.
it's a romantic movie about a waitress and a guy who falls for a waitress that reminds him of someone that he once knew. So it's going to be a fun little movie. There's a little twist at the end that I think I'll keep to myself, but
Yeah, don't give it away.
it's going to be a fun movie.
So for all these, do you actually write the scripts or how does that usually work?
Well, for the films that I make, I usually tend to write the scripts myself, and then I like to direct them.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I let someone else direct. I've done that in the past. A lot of times I do it now.
Mhm.
Um, it's usually a bad idea to have the writer on set unless the writer is the director.
Right.
Um, like with Interlude, Jonathan Lane was the writer. And I feel like he probably should have directed it, because you fall into this trap where normally how it's supposed to work in the film industry is like somebody writes the movie and then they hand it off
Hmm.
to a team of producers, a director, and those people sort of interpret the script and then they go make the film. The writer can sometimes, the process of filmmaking is that you sort of have to adapt to what either the situation gives you, or maybe
Right.
what the scene gives you, or what the actors give you, and you may improv some things, you may change it up. The film will evolve as it goes along. I've always called
Right.
it the theory of the four films. So
Mhm.
there's the the film that's in your head, and it's unaffected by anything practical. It's just the perfect film that you see in your head.
So budget, lighting, weather,
No effect. Yeah.
caterer, etc.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
the perfect movie in your head.
Okay.
The second movie is the one that you write. So you run it through the first filter, which is your ability to take that movie that's in your head and put it on the page. And then, of course, the third filter is what you shoot. So then it goes through all that stuff, the budget, the acting ability of the actors, the ability of the director, the gear that you have, the circumstances, all of those things. And then there's the movie that you edit, which you take that footage and you mold it into something. And that's based on, the people that do that and what their ability is. And so, kind of the journey of filmmaking is, taking the best path through that evolution.
Right.
And it's difficult for a writer to be involved in the shoot because inevitably the film will follow the path of that evolution, but the writers don't want to let go of the material that they wrote. So they'll strive to keep it the way that it was in the script.
But I mean, but how, I'm going to throw in a counter example. Suppose the writer who wrote it is somebody like you who knows everything about the whole deal. So they are able to roll with it, And in fact, they might even offer suggestions too, once they see that something isn't working the way they thought it would.
Yeah. Oftentimes when you have the writer be the director, they have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Because, they may, as a filmmaker, understand that that's part of the process. A lot of times, sometimes writers will be there and do rewrites, but there are times when writers can't do that. They'll just be like, that's not how it was in the script.
Right.
There's a famous example of a guy who wrote a script, and he, this is one that I know of from a friend of mine, and he was on set while the film was being made. And so the director would walk up to the lead actor and say, okay, your motivation for the scene is this is happening, this is how I want you to play it. And the director would walk away, and the writer would walk up to the actor and say, no, you're supposed to do it like this, and your motivation is that. And he would counter the director. And after about the fourth time that happened, the actor was like, who's this other guy who keeps giving me notes on my performance? And they had to throw the writer off the set because he was confusing the actors. And then of course that on another film that happened. So it was like, you do run into that. And Jonathan especially, he had trouble letting go of things that he wrote. If we did a line one way and he's like, we would drop a line or something, he'd want to go back and refilm it or re-record it or something. So what I told him eventually was, because he had a vision for what he wanted. Right. And so it's like, if you're going to be the person with the vision, then you just need to be the director, because the director is the person with the vision for what the film is supposed to be.
Right. Right. Well, there's a very clear, similar analogy to that in music. Like, I also have an orchestra that I founded and I play in, and we do a lot of new music. So we premiere new stuff, and it's always tricky to have the composer there as well as the conductor, because the conductor sees it one way and the composer obviously sees it another way. But what you do in that type of thing is you basically don't let the composer show up until the dress rehearsal. So by then everything's in pretty good shape. And then they also know that it's too late to make any gigantic changes. And so that's sort of how you deal with it in the music world. And
right on.
So it's especially tricky, like when we play my pieces, because I'm the concert master too, and I'm right there next to the conductor, and I have to tell myself not to argue with him and just keep my mouth shut as much as I can. But it never.
Art is art, and collaboration is always is not always easy.
Yeah. So that's why this whole idea is so foreign to me, because like my entire experience with filmmaking and such things is all from my YouTube channel, right? And and then eventually that evolved into my Star Trek fan films. And like So because of that, I'm the guy who does everything, right? At
Right.
one point, I was the only actor too.
Oh,
Now I finally have more than one actor besides me,
wow.
but it took a while to get there. It took like probably 50 videos before I got enough courage to have another actor in it. But
Nice.
like the thing that still I can't deal with is like when I'm directing my own stuff, I'm visualizing everything, right?
Hmm.
But then I also know that I'm going to be editing it. So I know all these tricks I can do as an editor that
Yeah.
allows me, if something isn't working and I'm like, it's not working or whatever, I can drop it and say, you know what, there's lots of ways around this when I edit it. Like I might just show something different and just hear your voice at that moment and that will solve
Hmm.
this problem or whatever. But like, that's why I don't get how a director can just be a director without being an editor, like not being sitting in the
Yeah.
editing process after the fact. So how does that work?
Whew. Well, it's interesting because I always kind of felt the same way. I figured if you were going to be a filmmaker, you needed to sort of know how every aspect of it all works so that you could understand what you could and could not do. Um,
Right.
I'll admit that the one thing that I can't do is CG. That's just something that's not in my skill set, but
Mhm.
I do have some idea how it works, and I've watched the process enough to know at least how it's done.
Right.
But you know, I'm the same way. I carry through from the writing to the filming to the editing, so I know the process inside and out.
Right.
I even learned, I learned how to use the camera. I learned how to record and master audio. I learned technically everything about it. And I also kind of delved into being a little bit of an actor myself so I could understand the actor's perspective.
Right.
And of course, story is the most important aspect of it because at the end of the day, you're just telling a story.
Right. And
Um,
don't forget, there's one other thing besides all that.
mm,
The background music
right, right.
can totally save your
That's
butt
very true.
sometimes. If
Well,
you got
yes,
a
and
scene that's not
that's
working, you can fix it with the music if you know what you're
you
doing.
get a great composer
Yeah.
to compose that music, which Avalon Universe thankfully has with
Hmm.
Adam Mullen, and it's made our film so much better.
Right.
But with regard to what you're talking about with editing,
Hmm.
I remember there was one scene where I was having someone else direct, but I was filming it, and they kept having an actor do the whole scene all the way through every time. And I was like, well, I don't need him to do the whole scene here. I just need him to say this one line. I just need him to walk up to this one person and say this one thing. That's all I need to happen in this shot.
Right.
That's all I'm going to use.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, you don't understand acting. They have to carry that through the whole way. And I was like,
You don't understand editing.
but not really, because like
So,
all he's going to say is like fire photon torpedoes or something like dumb like that. Like the emotional impact of the scene doesn't have to carry through to that one line. So it's like no, and we were spending like 5 minutes on every take doing
right.
that one scene over and over and over again, and
Well,
it made it take 4 times longer than it should have,
was
and that
this
was
edit
frustrating.
was this director basically were they like from theater?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a totally different deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
like at least the way I do my show, I literally do like 5 or 10 takes of every single line, every single cut. When I know we're going to be on
Yeah.
the actor for 20 seconds or less, they just do a bunch of different versions of that take. And then it's when I get in the editing room, that's when I got to find the takes and string them all together in a
Mm-hmm.
way that has continuity. But I do know that at least when I do it, in my brain, I have an idea of the whole continuity of the scene. So when I'm doing all
Mm-hmm.
these multiple takes, I'm coaching them to get them to that take that I really want, you
Sure.
know? And then once I have it, then I usually do one or two after that, and then I'm done. And then I go back and I try to remember where that one was and grab it. But funny thing, a lot of times I end up taking the very first take, you
It's either
know?
the very first one or the very last one.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
weird how that works.
Yeah.
And that'll be the case if, like, say the actors aren't there bouncing off each other.
Right.
The strongest thing you can do with actors is just let them, react to one another and immerse themselves in the scene.
Right.
But yeah. So it's, they're definitely, to me, because there's this whole process. It's not just, the editing or whatever. It's like there's the whole production process. So like, I say like 30% of it is creativity, and the other 70% is like time, asset, and resource management.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing the clock too. It's like a football coach, and you're running plays, and then like some of it is, okay, this is our scheme or whatever, but a good portion of it's managing the clock.
Right.
So it's like, you're out there and you're filming, you're managing your resources, you're managing the amount of time that you have. So you're also problem solving.
Right.
And so if you're gonna do 9 takes of the entire scene in a shot where you only need the guy to walk up and say one line in the edit, you're not helping yourself.
Right.
Because you're going against the amount of time you have to get it done.
Exactly.
And there were times that, like there was one film that there was a film in 2017 where we were like, the director was going for perfection to the point of it was an hour on one line. We spent an hour doing one line. And
I'm guilty of that.
And it was just like over and over again. And we started at like 7 a.m. and it was like 2 a.m. and we still weren't finished filming because of the level of trying to be a perfectionist that this filmmaker was going for, and it was driving everybody crazy.
Yeah.
And
See, the thing is though,
awful.
I mean, so I'm assuming that film happened indoors because obviously the light changed outside during all that time.
Yeah, a lot of portions of it did happen indoors.
But also, I mean, like, can't you get them in some kind of structure? Like, okay, we got to get this scene done by this time, this by that, that by that, that by that, so that they can't make it drag on. Because, I mean, how can you expect the actors at 2 a.m. to give you anything worth of shit if they're totally burned out,
Especially if you've been driving everyone crazy all day with it.
Right.
And that was one of the instances where I lost my mind. And it was like, it was 2 a.m. and we're in a bathroom, and the actor is supposed to be brushing their teeth. Like, she's brushing her teeth and notices that she has a bruise on her face. And the filmmaker, the director, was getting irritated with how the actor was brushing their teeth, with like the motion of the brushing, and was like, no, you can't.
It's got to be clockwise, not counterclockwise.
Like, there was this big complicated, order to putting, the toothpaste on, and how, and I finally just was like, it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's 2 a.m. and you're griping about how this person is brushing their teeth.
Yeah.
Like, calm down.
Also, that's really rough on the actors. When you put them in a straitjacket, then it's going to be really hard for them to find a good performance. You got to really give them more leeway than that.
Yeah. Yes, you definitely try to make a schedule for the day. Mm-hmm. And, it's normal that you're going to run behind or you're going to run into obstacles or whatever, but you do definitely make a set schedule for the day, and you do try to adhere to that, and you try to quote unquote make your day.
Right. And one thing that's different though now is now that everything's digital, and you can practically do it on a phone now. I mean, if you're good at it, you can make a phone look good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the old days where you had only so many feet of film that cost so many dollars per foot, and like you can't just go on forever because you just don't have the money for it.
Yeah, no, you definitely can. And if you run out of card space, you can dump your card to a hard drive and have another card standing by. And I do know people. My friend Vance Major makes a lot of his films on his phone. So
I know Vance. I know Vance pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a thing.
Yeah. Well, that's wild. It's just fun to talk shop like that. Like, see, again, like what I do, a lot of times when at least everything I've done is pure green screen. So it's all, and a whole bunch of it's over Zoom. And so
Mhm.
really you just work one actor at a time and just have to imagine everything, which is kind of a hard thing to do if you haven't done it before. Because
Yeah.
it's all in your mind, but you have to really imagine what's happening if it's going to end up making any sense. But
Well,
like,
yeah.
um, where was I going with that? So then it's all put together afterwards. But I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? It was
Well,
not about that important.
it was interesting because I'm actually working on a film right now, posting a film that has Vance in it.
Oh,
And
cool.
Vance shot all of his stuff in just at his house with his green screen
Right,
and then sent it to me.
right.
And then I shot another actor on the sets, and they're basically having a phone call, and so I'm
Right,
kind of putting that together. So it's, Vance just reading the script and giving me various different line readings.
right.
And this other actor gave me various different line readings. And so boom, kind of doing all of that. So it's, yeah, and it's interesting to try and build a performance of action and reaction from that. But it's the best, it's fun, it's the best thing you can do. So
Yeah. Okay. That's now I remember what I was going to say. The one thing is because at least the way when I do it is that's how I do it. When we're going through, and if the actor starts stumbling on some lines in the script, I mean, so the way we do it, I mean, I don't even make my actors even memorize their lines. We just have the script right there, and we just go line by, we just do it right then, you know.
mhm.
And then if they can't figure out what's going on, I can just explain to them what's happening in the scene. But then what happens is sometimes they'll stumble over some words, and I'll be like, well, maybe we should rewrite this. Maybe we should take this word out. Or sometimes we'll put in a word or take a word out. We can do that on the fly because I'm the director, the writer, and the editor, so I can do all that. Whereas, like,
Mhm.
if it was four different people, you couldn't be as agile, you know. That's why,
Yeah.
like, I kind of feel like, in a lot of ways, an indie filmmaker like us, who's like wears all these different hats, in some ways has a great advantage because you can pivot so fast and make those adjustments if you're really good.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So,
you have to. Sometimes that's the only way that you can get a project done. I know that the craziest example is the fan film we just finished, which is Agent of New Worlds. We actually shot that film 3 times, um, and it's crazy how it worked out. Where we shot with one actress, and there was just a situation where that wasn't going to work out. Like that actor was not going to work out playing this other character who was a supporting character, just wasn't working. So we had to, but we traveled all the way out to Phoenix, Arizona. It cost a lot of money to get there. We'd shot a week on that and then another movie. And we finished the other movie, but it was like this one wasn't going to work out. So we cast another actor and we shot like several days with that actor. And then this girl got a contract with like a modeling agency where she was like, okay, come to LA and do a photo shoot. And she was like, just bailed on us, basically was just like, okay, well, good luck with your stupid Star Trek movie. And she just took off, like quit on us in the middle of filming. And so we had to go back and start over again, where we had to hire a third actress. Now, luckily for us, the third time really was the charm because we really leveled up on the third actress that we hired, and we got somebody who was really, really good, who wanted the part, who invested in it, who showed up and knew their lines and wanted to be there and did an amazing job. And so, but the problem that we had is that we couldn't bring some of the other actors back. We'd had an actor that we brought in from Atlanta to do several scenes, and he couldn't come back. So what we had to do is, with the new actor we hired, we had to shoot that actor in 2 shots and close-ups and cut to 2 shots and close-ups of the other actors that we'd already shot. And so what was frustrating is that it had been designed where it would have wide shots that would show all the characters and stuff, and we
Right.
couldn't really utilize them. We had to do it all through, trickery and reverse angle
Right.
syndrome editing.
Right.
But we made it work, and it was a success story. It was we needed a cave. We needed we shot a set for the inside of a cave, but we needed the cave entrance.
Okay.
And we went and drove 5 hours to find this cave entrance we wanted to shoot at, and then had to hike and climb over a mountain to get to it. Almost killed ourselves. But we got 2 shots of our actor walking into a cave entrance, and it was worth it. It was a lot of fun.
So in that situation, did you at any time consider doing some green screen trickery?
A
Like
little
try
bit of
to
it.
like, well, the reason why I ask, because I do this all the time, is I take stock footage from some show and then I put myself in it. But like in that
Yeah.
situation, you could have potentially figured out a way to green screen in your new actor, at least in some of the shots, rather than having to retake the entire deal all over again.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't have really worked in that situation. We actually did
Uh-huh.
green screen her into a couple of shots,
Okay.
but as far as like the actual conversation and interact, I wanted her to interact with at least the actors that were there. And
Okay.
so I was able to put her in a 2-shot with Pixie, who was the main actress
Oh.
she was supposed to be interacting with. And so
Oh.
what we did was we were just able to, with the actors she wasn't supposed to be in the same shot with, we put her on the same set with Pixie, and then did 2 shots with Pixie, and then cut to the material we'd already shot with the other actors, and just did reverse angle
Right.
syndrome, and it worked out pretty good.
I think
uh,
I've seen this. Is this the one where their shuttlecraft gets disabled and they crash on the planet,
mhm.
and then Pixie and the other actor are
Yeah,
there? Okay, I've
yeah.
seen this. Yeah.
So Pixie plays
Okay. Yeah.
Commander Allenby, and then the other character, Lieutenant Ioka, is played by a wonderful actor named Jennifer Rader,
Right.
who's immensely talented, and the two of them had such great chemistry together. And when you get to the part where they're beamed aboard the ship,
Right. I
she's
remember
there with
this.
Pixie, but she was never with Warren Hawk or any of the other actors that were there. It was just her and Pixie.
Yeah. I
So
remember that scene.
so
Yeah.
we did some reverse angle syndrome, and then when it goes to just the material between Pixie and Warren, that was a different shoot. But
Well,
um,
you know what my sister told me and my sister, who was like 11 years old at the time, and I was like 13, or maybe she was 13 and I was 15. We saw Star Wars, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. And the first thing she said afterwards, she goes, Princess Leia's lipstick keeps changing in the movie.
yeah,
And I was like, I didn't notice that.
well,
But
you get all kinds of interesting things. Like there's an episode of Next Generation where it's the third episode, The Naked Now, and Geordi's sitting on a bio bed, and in half the shots that he's in, there's a combo stand behind him, which is like a lighting stand that you hang lights on for light
oops.
controlling devices, and it's just behind him, and then it disappears, and then it's back again. So
Yeah.
it's like, on one take they shot him with this combo stand behind him on accident, and then somebody went, oh, there's a C stand back there, and so somebody went and moved it, got it out of the shot, and then they did another take. But then they decided they didn't like his acting or something in the second take, and went back to the first take for a lot of his lines. And so the C stand's there, then it's not, then it's there
Yeah.
again.
There's lots
And
of
yeah,
things like that.
there's shots in TOS where Uhura's hair changes, where like she's got a bun, then it's down, then she's got a bun again, or
Oh,
vice
I've never
versa.
noticed those ones. Do you remember what episode
So
that is?
that kind of stuff happens. It's it's
You know what
nobody's
happened to
fault.
me? I left a couple things in mine. Like I I always, because my character Captain Hardinger isn't married, so he doesn't have a wedding ring. There's a couple scenes where I forgot to take my ring off and it's on. But it was such a good shot that I just left it. And later on I figured out how to do in Premiere Pro. I figured out a way to get rid of wedding rings when I know my trick.
Yeah.
You just you do 2 layers of the same shot, right?
And then you
Then
paint it out.
you just mask out a patch of skin right next to the wedding ring, and then you just shove it over the top of the wedding ring. It looks great. You never know.
Yeah. So
It's a lot of work, but you can do it.
there are all kinds of little tricks, but it's like,
Yeah.
They're always going to be like there are continuity errors that are my fault where there's a graphic on a screen, then a different graphic on a screen. It's
Right.
just sometimes when you're doing if the big boys are going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes too. Star Trek Generations, for example, is a good example where that whole kind of climactic scene with Kirk and Picard and Soren,
Right.
they had to go out to like the Valley of Fire to shoot that. And the only way they were able to do that was they had to make a deal where once the shoot was over, they had to completely restore the land to its natural condition.
Okay.
And so they go out and they shot that scene, and then they came back and they watched it, and it was like, yeah, this didn't, this is supposed to be Kirk's death scene, and it didn't turn out very well. It was garbage. And so the studio made the decision. They were like, well, we're going to go back out there and shoot it again, because you got to get this right. So they had to go out, rebuild all the sets, bring the actors back, shoot again, and then again, restore the land to its natural state. It was like a $10 million mistake.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So
Also,
yeah,
I think they rewrote that scene, didn't they? Because he
they
died a
did.
different way first time
They
around.
completely redid it.
Yeah, because I think he
Totally
got shot in
take
the
that.
back in the original version. Yeah, and then they decided that wasn't really epic enough.
Yeah, so like, filmmaking, there's an obsession with perfection that I'm very well acquainted with, but it's like,
Yeah,
you're
gotta let
never
it
going to
go.
get it perfect.
Yeah.
You got to give up on that at some point. Like I had to give up on Agent of New Worlds this past week and go, I'm done with it. I'm not messing with it anymore because I'll never be happy with it.
Now are you talking editing now, or
movie in the world? I would not be happy with it. I would never be happy with. I'm never happy with any film that I make. I just go moving on because you're never going to be. I mean, I'm proud of the work that everyone did on it. And I'm proud of the effort that everyone put into it, and everyone did an amazing job. It's always myself that I'm going to be like, I could have done better, or I could still do this, or I don't like how I did that. And so I'm never going to be happy with my own efforts. And you just have to eventually, be done trying to make the work of art perfect, because it's never going to be perfect in your mind.
Well, now I'm going to ask you this now, as a cinematographer, do you prefer doing green screen stuff or doing real stuff? And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
So first, this is why of course, all I do is green screen. But when I start thinking about multiple actors at the same time on a real set and everything, to me, that sounds terrifying because I'm so used to doing it all on green screens with separate actors. So then when I'm editing, I can get the camera angles just like I like. I can tweak all kinds of stuff, change the background, change everything, and get it just the way I want it. So everything is composed the way I want it. And but if I had to do it in real life with real actors and a real camera, I'm like, I'd never be able to do that.
Yeah.
To get it to that point.
I'm kind of the opposite. Like, kind of the reason that it took me so long, as long as it took me as long as, hold on, it's my son is throwing a fit. It took me as long as it did to make a Star Trek fan film, because I felt that the only way that I'd be able to do it for a long time is to do something green screen. And I just didn't want to do that. I didn't feel like I could do it very well. I wanted real actors on a real set in a real environment that I could light, and that you could have, you could give a blocking to and have them move around and interact with that environment, and interact with each other. And so I didn't want to do it until I had a set to shoot on. And then once somebody was telling me, hey, these sets are available for you to go shoot on, first at Neutral Zone Studios in Kingsland, Georgia, and then at Warp 66 Studios here in Arkansas, until there were actually sets available, I kind of wasn't interested in doing it. And, a little bit to your point, for the longest time, it really wasn't a thing. And if you're wanting to do next generation era, you definitely are going to struggle with that.
Right.
A lot of people did fan films green screen because you'd have these horror stories where there was one group in particular that tried to build sets. They actually got like something like 2/3 of the way through building their sets, and there was some dispute with the landlord of the building they were in, and the landlord just went in and bulldozed their sets before they were even done building.
Oh no.
And so
God.
you spend a lot of money building sets or whatever, your sets get bulldozed, you're never even able to shoot a single episode. So it's like, there's the Exeter group, they were sweating building their set until the last second. But then they made a really epic, amazing fan film, and one of the greatest that's ever been made. And then after that, they were like, okay, we're good. And then they just sort of left their sets. And those, luckily somebody was able to eventually take possession of those and continue to, make them available for films. But it was like, if I didn't have a physical set that I was going to shoot on, I kind of didn't want to do it.
Right.
And now that I do have that available to me and to our crew, I mean, it's all the difference in the world.
Right.
So yeah, I want to, I want to be able to have the actors interact with that set, interact with each other. I want there to be complex blocking and movement on that set. So yeah, I definitely am always a physical set guy. There is some limited green screen that I've done, and we will continue to do some of that and evolve into that more. But yeah, I like an actual set.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a double-edged sword, because when you're doing green screens, on one hand, you have total control over what you're gonna do and stuff. But on the other hand, you have to put so much work into it to make it look real.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like if you just shot a normal scene on a set that was properly lit, it would look real right off the bat. But when you green screen, you got to really know what you're doing.
Well,
to
like
make
one of the things that we did was like we green screened some of the screens on the bridge because I wanted to be able to animate those the way that I wanted to, because it's alternate universe. So we don't want it. Avalon universe takes place in an alternate universe. We didn't want the displays on the bridge to look exactly like the original show. So I created some new animations, and then we green screened, the different screens on the bridge. And then I did what was on the screens in post. And that was so much work and so much of a pain in the butt to do it. I was like, I'm just going to go sell plasma and buy screens on the bridge.
So that's
and
probably
pre-production.
So you might have, that usually when you have to struggle with green screens, it's because you didn't light the green screen right. But like for something like that, you should be able to do, what I would do is I would just do a backlit green panel so that it's absolutely the same shade of green all the way across it. And then it should be really easy to key out if you do it right.
It wasn't so much the key that was the issue. The key was fine. It was the motion tracking, because we had the cameras moving a lot.
And then you got that blur effect.
You'd have to motion track. And then the mistake I was making was that the actors were walking in front of the track points. The motion track until the actor walked in front of the track point, and then you'd have to pick it up after they walk away, and then you'd have to extrapolate in the middle. And it was really hard to get that right, so it would bounce a little bit. And it was It was super frustrating. And then you have to make the tracking point a different color than the green screen. So then you
Yeah.
have to go frame by frame and paint out the track point.
Yeah.
And then
I
there was,
remember that scene. I think I remember actually noticing that the screens were jiggling some. I think I
and
know
there was
exactly
just,
what you're talking
there
about.
was absolutely no way
Yeah.
you could get it not to do that. It was like,
Um,
it was weeks and weeks of frustration. And
I
I was just
think
like, never
maybe,
doing this again. Never.
I think if you did it in After Effects, you might have been able to pull it
I did
off.
it in After
Oh,
Effects.
really? Okay.
Yeah, and with Mocha and all that stuff, and I still couldn't get it to track
Okay.
right. I still couldn't get it to, and I was just like, it was weeks and weeks and weeks of being
Yeah.
pissed off about it. And so I just
Yeah.
said, I'm just gonna buy screens,
Yeah.
for the bridge and install them, and then do this stuff in pre-production, and then put them on a Raspberry Pi or a SD card, and just play it while we're actually filming, and
Well, of
save
course,
myself the
in TO
stress.
in TOS, none of the screens are they're most of them are just still pictures, except for
Mm-hmm.
the main view screen. That's how they got around all that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm
yeah.
just doing this to myself at this point. I'm causing myself this frustration.
Well,
But
now you learn. Now you know. Of course, now we're talking about green screens, and now the industry just switched to having these gigantic projection screen things. If you got like $10 million, whatever that thing costs. Like The
yeah,
Mandalorian's doing that, and Star Trek Discovery is doing that now, where you have this whole virtual backdrop behind you that everybody actually sees and can interact with.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing, and it looks amazing.
yeah. You
You
can't
can
even
tell they're
tell.
using it. I mean, if you're looking for it, you can tell that they're using it. But it's like, but it's making it so much cooler. Like it's making these environments so much more immersive and beautiful, and you're
Yeah,
actually photographing it with the camera. I love it. I think it's totally awesome what they're doing with that
yeah.
technology.
Of course, the thing is now they have to have all the sets and all that stuff built before the actors even show up.
Hmm.
All the landscapes.
Yeah.
Let's go shoot it on location and get it all up there exactly
Hmm.
the way it's going to be before the actors even say their lines. So
Yeah.
again, it's a different deal than being able to tweak it in post.
Yep.
Yeah,
But it makes a difference. And like, until they were telling us that they were doing that with the Mandalorian, we had no idea. And we're
yeah,
watching it going, gosh, what amazing locations did they go to do this? Or
yeah,
because you were just convinced it was real stuff. The lighting was spot on and all of that. And it
yeah,
was so I think it's great technology. If I had the money to use it, I would certainly use it. I can tell you that.
yeah. Well, of course, my solution to all that is basically just steal everything from every other show I like. So they do all the hard stuff, and then I just have to put my new actors
Right.
within that scene.
There you
But
go.
but that was all. Also, that was just me. It started out as just me screwing around,
Hmm.
and seeing what I could do, learning how to edit and stuff like that. And what the hell
You
is
know
going
that,
on? Can you hear that? Now I'm getting weird noises in the rest of the house.
well, no, mine is I've got a 4-year-old son,
Okay, maybe I'm hearing
and
your son because I
he,
know my wife.
he's
Some
loud.
my wife. I heard the doorbell ring, and then somebody walked in, and my wife and them started laughing. So I'm assuming it's one of our friends, and
Hmm.
it stopped. Anyway, so like I guess part of the thing is like my films are literally no budget at all. Like the first one I did was zero, and then now a typical episode for me costs maybe $500, you
Right.
know, but it comes out looking really good because I mean there's $500 for buying props, or somebody's uniform or something like that. And I guess
Hmm.
it would be way more if I counted buying a new computer and paying for Premiere Pro every month and all the different software I use and all that stuff that I don't really count as part of the budget. But it's like the thing that I've discovered is that nowadays with the computers, technology and everything, that you can make something look really good, like really good, with almost no money if you know what you're doing and if you're willing to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, literally, like you said,
Right.
going frame by frame, trying to. I've done so many things where I didn't green screen it quite right or whatever, and I had to cookie cutter around it, you know, frame by frame
Yep, I've done that.
till I was satisfied with it, all that kind of stuff. Like I've done that thing, what's it called in um After Effects, where it supposedly will do it for you. It'll automatically cut around your subject.
Oh yeah, I
But I've
haven't.
tried it and it doesn't work very well.
Yeah,
So
that's the
I've
thing
gone back
is,
to just doing it manually.
I always refer to these things as Adobe's magic tricks,
Yeah.
because they always say like, oh, we've got this magic trick, we've got this thing where it's like the where you do an interview and you don't want to dissolve, like you cut it and you bring it together and it'll like morph cut or whatever, or we have this magic trick or that magic trick, and their magic tricks never work. Like like that thing you're talking about, like I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, I don't know what the name of it is because I've never tried to use it, because it's like, oh, it's just going to be another one of the magic tricks that they claim solves all your problems, and then it just like the warp stabilizer, which is
Yeah.
like the most useless plugin in the history of plugins, because it's like the warp stabilizer makes it worse.
Yeah. I think
You
I've
know what I
tried using
mean?
the warp stabilizer once and I threw it out too. I mean, well, one thing, if you want a weird trippy effect, that's fine. But if you want something that's going to look real, then it's a different ball game. But
Yeah,
that's kind of what fascinates me about filmmaking, or to tell you the truth, any kind of art, is you're always exploring what are these qualities of this thing that create this illusion that it looks real,
yeah.
right? And that's kind of a fascinating subject to always go down. It's the lighting or whatever. You got to do all these things until you finally hit it, and then you're like, there, that's it. That's what I wanted, and that's real, and that's convincing. You
It's
know,
literally every aspect of it plays a role in
yeah.
the storytelling process. Literally every aspect of it does, and so it's like, it can be difficult, because if you get a costume wrong, like
Right.
like one thing is like, oh, you're seeing a clothespin or something, or you see the back of a costume with the seam or something, and like there's nothing you can do about it. Like, okay, that's something that takes away from the illusion. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
get a sound problem and it doesn't sound really good. Well, if you're noticing
It
that it doesn't
pulls you
sound
out.
very good, and you can't hear what the actor is saying, that's one more element that's taking you out of the story. So
Right.
it's like all of these different elements, and it's a million different things, you know, they all play into the illusion of immersing in the story. And that's why, a lot of people do try their hand at filmmaking, but that's why
It's hard. It's
it's
hard to
hard,
do it
and not a
really
lot of
well.
people can actually get to a good finished product
Yeah.
because of all the factors that go into it. And especially if you're one man banding it, it's very hard.
Right.
And you really shouldn't ever do that. I think maybe for small stories that's one thing, but really the greatest power of filmmaking is teamwork. And so
Collaborating. Yeah.
when you have a team, and that's really what I wanted Avalon Universe to become, is that when you have a good team and that team works together, it elevates the quality of the film so much. And
Right.
there was a lot this year in our filmmaking journey that has been, um, us finding ourselves as a team, and learning what our strengths and weaknesses are, and learning to work as a team, and kind of finding ourselves. Now I think for a year of finding ourselves, we've done a pretty good job, because I think we made two of the greatest Avalon Universe films that have ever been made. I
I think
think
I've watched both of those. You
I
know.
think they're the two
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
So for a quote unquote, what you might refer to in a sporting situation as a rebuilding year, which
Hmm.
is what 2021 was for Avalon Universe. It was a rebuilding year.
Hmm.
For a rebuilding year, I think we did amazing, and I think that that's a testament to the power of teamwork. And I think that now that this team has found its dynamic, and and we've, kind of had to burn away the destructive elements in the forge of filmmaking, so to speak.
Right.
I think this coming year we're going to do some really powerful stuff, and I'm excited about it.
So have you got the scripts all ready to roll?
We do. We have 3 of
Okay.
them ready to roll, and we actually have 4 ready
Okay.
to roll, but we're only going to do 3 of those 4 this year. We actually start shooting in 2 weeks.
Oh, cool.
So, and we're gonna be doing a lot of shooting in the winter months, because the some of the sets that you go to film at are not climate controlled, and so when you shoot in the winter, it's going to be cold on set, and that's a thing. But also, you definitely don't want to do it when it's hot, because
All the lights.
when
Yeah.
it's cold, it's just kind of frustrating, and you get cold, and then you got to go warm up in between scenes or whatever. When you try and do it in the summer, the sets become an oven, and it becomes dangerous.
Right.
And you're for Star Trek, you're dressed more longer sleeve and all of that anyway. So if you're going to film, you should film when it's cold, and so you have a window of about January until March, that maybe April if you really push it. Now the mistake that every single year that we've done this, we've talked about how we don't want to shoot in the summer, and we've ended up shooting in the summer on the sets, and it's been miserable. And so we're finally just not going to do that. We're planning out to just do a flurry of shooting in the winter, get it done by like April, and then go on hiatus from April until maybe October, and then start shooting again in October. But we'll take the vast majority of the middle of the year off and put that towards post-production.
Right.
So that's kind of how that's going to go.
That's wow.
So we'll definitely be working towards making a film during the spring and summer months, but that most of that time will be spent on post-production instead of filming.
And your typical films are like 20 to 30 minutes long, right?
The CBS guidelines say that you're supposed to keep it at basically half an hour or so. But the interesting thing is that people think that CBS just like, oh, I thought CBS killed fan films, or how can you be doing this with the rules that CBS made? And it's like, they didn't really make rules. They just said, like, if you want to avoid being sued, do it like this.
And we won't guarantee that we won't sue you, but you probably won't be.
We probably won't sue you if you do it like, if you operate under this set of guidelines, we probably won't sue you. But then ever since they've introduced them, they haven't enforced them. Like, right. Literally only one fan filmmaker that I know has ever been contacted, and they literally only had a problem with one thing he did, and once he changed that, they left him alone. So it was like,
oh, this was besides Axanar?
It wasn't Axanar. They've
okay.
never Axanar. I think Axanar's only been contacted one time post lawsuit, but this was another fan filmmaker, and he was contacted about something he did in his film. They just said, look, all you got to, they sent him a cease and desist letter, and he kind of was frustrated with that. But then they called him and they said, all you really have to do is change this one thing and we'll leave you alone. And then he changed that, and then I left him alone. So it was like,
now, is it public knowledge of that thing that he changed?
I don't believe so, but it's like,
okay.
It's a deal where, like, every single fan film that's been made post guidelines has violated them in some way, like one or two aspects of it. Like every film violates like 2 guidelines or something. Right. And it's like that nobody's ever gotten in trouble. So they've clearly demonstrated that they kind of don't care what we're doing.
Yeah.
The point of the guidelines really was, and I believe CBS on this, they said that what was occurring previously, you had this previous age of fan films that I refer to as like the golden age of fan films. So you had Star Trek Continues, Star Trek New Voyages, Renegades, Axanar, but all of these sects were like, you were in whatever camp you were in. You were either Star Trek Continues, or you were New Voyages, or you were Axanar, or you were Renegades. And there was very little crosstalk. And if people crossed between them, it was like, why are you doing that? And they were competing against one another to be the top dog. They really were. There was like a quote unquote arms race going on.
That's funny.
Even before John Van Sitters called it an arms race, it was called that by the fan filmmakers, where it was like, who could have the most Star Trek actors in it? Who could have the biggest budget?
The real alumni, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, it was who could make the coolest top dog fan film. And it was getting a little out of control. And CBS was like, this is not the spirit for which this was created for. Like, a fan film is supposed to be a labor of love. And so their intent was really that fan films should be made by fans. They didn't want to see
big budget stuff.
Yeah, they didn't want to see Tim Russ and half the cast of Deep Space Nine and 2/3 of the cast of Voyager, and a bunch of people from behind the scenes and 2 alumni of the original series all working on one fan film. In their mind, that's not a fan film. What they wanted to see was Gary Davis building his own captain's chair. They wanted to see, Robin Hart doing his own fan films on a green screen, or Nick Cook, doing missions in Scotland, or Vance Major in the woods in Junction City, Kansas. That's what they intended for fan films, was what you have now, which is, I refer to as the silver age of fan films, where it really is fan filmmakers creating their fan generated content. And the major difference, I think, that exists now between the current generation of fan films and the previous is, we don't compete with each other like that. Yeah. You never see a situation where Aaron Vanderklay is like trying to throw shade at Gary O'Brien and is like, I'm going to be better than Gary O'Brien. Screw that guy.
Yeah,
you never see Gary O'Brien being like, oh, you can't do anything with Nick Cook. You never have Nick Cook being like, oh man, Gary Davis sucks. Like, you don't see that. We all realize that we're in this together, that we're all contributing to art that we want to create. And therefore, we all support each other in that.
That's good. That's way better.
Yeah, it's a totally different environment where I can appreciate Aaron Vanderklay, and he can appreciate what we're doing, and we can respect Nick Cook, and Nick Cook respects what we're doing. Or Gary Davis, who, called me up and he said, hey, would you be willing to come work on one of our projects? And I said, I'll be right there. You know what I mean? Or I can be involved with Ray Tessie doing Tales from the Neutral Zone, or I can work with Dan Reynolds and Glen Wolfe on Federation Files.
So you're busy.
So I am.
Now these aren't paid gigs, are they? Or are you actually? Wow. Mm-mm. So that's still a total labor of love.
It's doing it. It's doing it. I do fan films. Well, there's the love of Star Trek and the homage of it and the art of it, and it's your way of living the adventure. Right. And that's, I haven't left or given up like indie film or, profitable storytelling by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't. I have four of my projects going out to a distribution company.
Right.
So I'm not all that worried about it, but it's
so now with streaming, it seems like the amount of money to be made is much less because so many different shows are taking a slice of the pie.
Well, they're so hungry for content that the thing is that like, say it was 1985, you'd have no shot. You couldn't, if you're just a normal guy living in Bentonville, Arkansas, how are you ever going to make a film unless you're, you
got to move to LA, dude.
Yeah. You're buying a 16 millimeter camera and shooting on a shoestring budget. And then what are you going to go pitch that to the network or to the movie studio? Like, they're going to laugh at you. Whereas today, even if you're just streaming on YouTube, people are watching it.
Right. That's so much better now.
In 19, in 1995, your best hope was to shoot something with the VHS camcorder and play it on the public access television station.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did that, and I did that, and I still do that. Not with VHS, but I put things on the public access television station. But today, you can put things on YouTube, and people all over the world see it. 1 million people.
Yeah.
Avalon Universe has 1.1 million views on
That's
YouTube.
great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Like the other thing is like, people stay, like I've already had people telling me like, well, your thing is so good. Why don't you like write a real show? Why don't you like change your career and do that? And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I really don't want to, because I thought about it. Like, suppose you get a real show, for example, Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
I watched that. In my opinion, that was ingenious. I thought there was so much good stuff in that. The cinematography, the whole thing. I totally loved the show. And freaking Netflix canceled it in a month.
Yeah.
So, like, the thing is if you're in that environment, you're always wondering whether you're going to be alive or not. But like when we're over here, like if I do my show, I can do umpteen million episodes of Egotastic Trek, and I've already got them flying through my brain, and I don't have to worry about changing it or who's watching it or whatever. So that whether we're going to get the next season or not, all that stuff,
Well,
I don't have to worry about.
And your motivation for telling those stories is wanting to tell those stories.
Right. And the coolest thing is with Star Trek, I can totally get into it now, because what I realize, at least, and I'm sure this is what lots of fan film people realize, is once you establish your Star Trek world and you're doing just do a Star Trek thing, then you can do anything you want. You can tell any story you want and just make it Star Trek-y somewhat. But other than that, you have the latitude to go anywhere, anytime. You can, you got a holodeck, you can beam down to any planet, you can just, anything you can dream up, you can put in your show, and you can tell all kinds of allegorical things, and you can preach whatever you want to preach, philosophy or politics or whatever. You can do it all in your Star Trek show if you want, So I find it like a great springboard to just really just be creative.
Well, and you have, in this sense, you have control over your own creativity, because so a lot of what we hear a lot of times with fan films is that we're making the kind of Star Trek that people want to watch, because they try to watch the modern Star Trek that's produced by the official license holder, and they don't like what's being done there, so they turn to fan films to see the kind of classic Star Trek that they're longing to see. Well, if you look at how modern Star Trek is produced, telling the best story isn't always the motivation, or telling the type of story that the audience wants isn't always the motivation behind what they do. They have.
Well, the question is, who is the audience? And in a big show like that, they want to hit as many people, as many viewers as they want. So when if it's that broad of a stroke, you can never, it's always going to be bland and mediocre, because you're trying to hit everybody. Whereas like if you can narrow your focus to like, I want to tell something that's really, this is what I want to tell, and some people are going to get it and some people aren't, but you know what? I don't mind, because all I care about is the people that get it, because that's what I want to tell. And when you're doing fan films, you can do that, because it's like, well, you guys got 1 million views, right? Like for me, success for me is like 5,000 views. If I get 5,000, my first one got 10,000 views now. But for me, that's enough success to make, it's enough, like, to tell you the truth, if 10 people watched my show and really liked it, that would probably be enough for me to keep going. Because at least somebody got what was going on in my head, So it's like a totally different mindset.
The motivation with what is produced by CBS, there's a motivation coming from the studio or from the network that then filters down to the people making the content. So they say, this is what's important. So they tell the writers and they tell the producers, this is the kind of story you have to tell. These are the kind of characters that you have to have.
Right.
This is what you have to emphasize and how you create this. And so the product is produced based on the doctrine of what the studio tells them to produce. And so
It's like record
telling a good
companies.
story,
Yeah.
telling a good, honest story is not always the motivation behind what they produce. It's trying to do what the studio tells them. And
Right.
so, you know, you're almost better off as to be a fan filmmaker in doing this, because you're able to motivate your own stories the way you want to tell them, and not the way that CBS is telling you have to do it.
Right.
To a degree.
Yeah. So let's stop for a second. So we keep talking about CBS says this, CBS says that,
Yeah.
CBS wants you to do that. Who the hell is CBS? I mean, who in CBS is the person who understands Star Trek that's dictating all this stuff? It's some, I mean, you know how that goes. It's some committee, and it's a bunch of people. It's a bunch of people that really sort of maybe hopefully understand, but most of them don't. And the sum total of them for sure doesn't understand. And plus, everybody has their own opinion on what Star Trek's supposed to be, right?
There are a lot of, there are a lot of different opinions on what Star Trek is and is not.
Yeah.
And that's, where I'm going to then reverse course on what I've been saying, sort of counter it a little bit, is that people will say that modern Star Trek isn't Star Trek. Like, this isn't Star Trek. And I kind of am going to disagree with them a little bit on that, because Star Trek.
I'm going to say that Discovery season 1 in no way, shape, or form was Star Trek, no matter what you say.
Yeah.
Maybe season 2 and 3 and 4 got somewhere into Star Trek land, but season 1 was not Star Trek. No way in hell.
But a lot of people will look at anything. It could be a J.J. Abrams movie. It can be Discovery. It can be Picard. It can be Lower Decks. And they'll say, this isn't Star Trek. And it's like, well, I'm just going to give you guys a friendly reminder that Star Trek has been space hippies and ghost candles and, all kinds of weird stuff over the years, and people turning into lizards and, you name it. So it's like, let's not romanticize, classic Star Trek too much, because it did have its missteps. But Star Trek.
Hey, I like the Space Hippies episode, actually.
I enjoy it too. I make jokes about it.
I actually made a video of it.
But Star Trek has been a lot of things, and
my favorite part of the Space Hippies episode is the musical bicycle wheel that Spock did the duet with. He had his Vulcan auto harp, and the guest star played her bicycle wheel, and then it kind of jammed out.
So I think there's a delicate balance. I think there's a delicate balance between, letting Star Trek evolve a little bit, but also understanding what it's rooted in. You had the deal, back in the Rick Berman days, where Rick Berman had a bust of Gene Roddenberry on his desk, and if Ira Stephen Bear or somebody was going into territory he thought Gene wouldn't have approved of, he put a blindfold on the bust of Roddenberry so he didn't see it happening or whatever. But
that's a good story.
If you didn't have people like Ron Moore and Ira and the people writing Deep Space Nine going against what Gene would have wanted, you would have never had Deep Space Nine. And
right.
Deep Space Nine was the greatest Star Trek ever made.
I agree. Well, besides TOS.
So yeah.
I agree. The thing that I really liked about Deep Space Nine was that they weren't afraid to go into religion for real. Like before then, Star Trek was always, religion was always there was always some technology behind it, and that was it. And it never had any real spiritual element to it. But then Deep Space Nine, they went in, there's this actual religion, and the captain's having these visions, and he's talking to the prophets, and it's not bullshit. It's actually really talking to the prophets. And I thought, whoa, I like this show.
Well, Gene had an unwritten thing that was, I think it was in the Writer's Bible or something, where he said that every character or every Starfleet character in Star Trek was an atheist.
Right.
And I don't think it was in an aggressive, angry way, like we're atheists and to heck with religion or whatever. I think it was more that in the sense of, well, it's the 23rd or the 24th century, and people just moving past it. And so it's an unspoken thing. It's like, well, you don't believe in Santa Claus anymore.
Right.
Not trying to relate the two, but that was just the attitude that he had in his Writer's Bible. And so the subject really wasn't addressed. And so, like you said,
Wasn't
Deep
he a
Space Nine was
Baptist?
the
I
first
think
time they.
like his
Mhm.
parents were Baptist or something, and he really soured against that brand of
Yeah,
Christianity.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
that
I don't.
just changed his whole thing.
I
But
just know that
surprisingly,
that's
though,
what he had in his writer's Bible.
surprisingly, they had that one episode where they went to 20th century Rome, and then right at the
Yep,
end, Uhura says the whole thing. Well, it wasn't the sun in the sky; it was the Son of God.
true,
So it was like a
true.
big Christian message right there at the end.
Yeah, it was. It's
Yeah.
interesting that and I think that Roddenberry didn't cement in having sort of the atheist or secular humanist, as you might refer to it. I don't think that he
Right.
settled into really having that viewpoint until the mid to late 70s. And so I think that
Oh,
there was
really?
more of a reflection of belief in God in the 60s Star Trek, because it was discussed more than once. Like the M5 computer said that murder was contrary to the laws of man and God. So
Right.
it was reflected a little bit more there. But I think in the 70s is when he sort of started to have that viewpoint. And then it was in the 80s when he was creating TNG that those kinds of things were being put into the actual writer's Bible, but
Huh.
not spoken aloud on the show ever, just something that was, okay, keep this in mind.
But surprisingly, he had that godlike character of Q.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, Q was not like the
Who
god
was a
of the whole
character
universe.
created by Gene Roddenberry.
Right. He was kind of one of those demigods, sort of like a Olympian god that's like just a like to play,
There to cause trouble, the
Yeah,
god of mischief.
like the Square of Gothos type of a dude.
Yeah.
So you
So
have it, but Q never had some secret technology that gave him all his powers. It was all inherent in him just having all these inherent powers that were natural to him and the continuum and everything. So I mean that
yeah,
was just one step down. That's practically one step down from like people's vision of God,
basically, yeah, he was
So
basically omnipotent.
yeah.
So
Yeah, interesting stuff. Wild. Okay. Well, how long have we been going for? Hour and a
about an hour
half.
and a half. Yeah.
So now we got to wrap it up somehow.
All right.
So, Avalon Films. Do you have a website that's just for Josh Michael Irwin, or where should we send people? Like, what link should I put down there?
Really just go to the Avalon Universe YouTube channel and check out our films there. That's kind of the best place. We don't really have a website, so to speak, for
Okay.
Avalon Universe at the moment, but just the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And hope you enjoy them.
Avalon Universe, right down there, link in the description. And then you said you've got 3 or 4 scripts getting that are pretty much
Yeah,
ready to.
we've got 3 films that we intend to make here in 2022 coming up. The first is called The Needs of the One, and it's going
Okay.
to sort of flip the script on the TOS episode Amok Time. So
Okay.
it's gonna take that concept and kind of turn it on its head, and it's gonna be a fun project.
Plus
I think
Tale of
it's
Two
gonna,
Cities, right?
I think it's gonna
Yeah.
be the dark horse to be the coolest fan film we make
Cool.
this year at least. And then the second one that's going to be the bigger production is going to be called Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs, and it's
Crisis on
going
Infinite what?
Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs. So like our
Excaliburs.
ship is the USS Excalibur,
Okay.
and so it's going to be the Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs.
So it's like a multi-dimensional type of thing.
Kind of a multi-dimensional. It's going to be more lighthearted and fun and kind of comedic. Where
Now, is there going to be a
characters-
kid that pulls a sword out of a stone?
No, but it's going to be, you're going to have the characters that are on the spaceship sort of meet all the different alternate versions of themselves.
Oh, cool.
Different universes. So like, we have our Avalon universe. And they're
Oh,
going to be
nice.
the Prime universe and the Kelvin universe and the Mirror universe and Babylon 5 and Galaxy Quest and
So
Orville
that's gonna use a lot of green screens, right?
It will use some green screens, but it actually won't use a lot. We're going to be doing motion control camera work, and we're gonna change the characters, the actors' outfits and such, and do motion control photography where they're all being shot on the same set. So, which is what Voyager would do a lot of.
Okay. It's all in the same. So their uniforms are changing, but the set's not changing.
That's correct. So, you'll set up either the still camera, you'll set up the camera, or you'll set up the camera move motion control. The actor will come in, act as one version of the character, change costume, come back, you repeat the camera move, they act as the other version of the character, and so on. You may have 3 or 4 versions of the same actor in one shot.
Oh, and they're constantly phasing in and out of these different universes?
No, they're
Type of
just, they're
thing?
all there together. They're going to be all there together, and they'll meet each other and talk. And they won't be phasing. They'll all be in the same place. They'll all be
Interesting.
trapped together in the same place. And so it's going to be a fun, kind of lighthearted adventure. People
Wow.
hear that name, Crisis on Infinite Excaliburs, and they think it's going to be like a epic DC crossover. No, it's going to be
Yeah.
more like Rick and Morty. It's going to be
Okay.
silly. And then the final one of the year is going to be called Unearthed.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to shoot in the fall. And that's a film that Pixie, our lead actress, is writing herself. And
Oh,
it is
cool.
a story she wants to tell that's really, really neat, really sweet.
Nice. Okay, I didn't know she was a writer too.
It's about a
Nice.
refugee. So
That's
that's
cool.
something that we're excited to do.
Fun. Well, I know like is Vance going to be in on this crossover thing? Like, is his universe going to be in there?
Vance is going to be, there are going to be multiple different versions of Vance that we see. So,
Okay.
yeah, he will
Because
definitely be part of that.
he has my character, Captain Hardinger, in a couple of his scripts.
Oh, cool, cool.
But he hasn't shown me. I mean, I've already shot the stuff basically on a green screen, and I've seen the scripts, but I don't know the whole story. So I don't know if that is going to end up in your Avalon thing, or maybe it's still going to stay in his.
It would stay in his.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But he will be in our films. Yes.
Nice.
He's in several of them already.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. It's exciting to do all this stuff. So can I ask, like, well, how do you fund all this stuff if it's all like, how do you pay the bills?
Well, a good portion of it I paid for myself.
Okay.
I've spent between $30,000 and $40,000 on it thus far.
Wow.
Pixie paid for her, and her husband Aaron paid for Agent of New Worlds.
Okay.
And we're doing some fundraising now. There is a percentage of it that's been from crowdfunding,
Okay.
and will continue to be crowdfunding. And we're working on our next phase of our crowdfunding very shortly. So there's going to be another crowdfunding thing that we're going to be pitching very soon.
Okay. And then can I ask, like, do you have a day job too, or like how, I mean, are you able to be a filmmaker full time, or do you also have to do like a quote normal job to make a few bucks?
I'm like a filmmaker part-time, other than what I'm doing with Star Trek fan films. Like, I've worked on other people's projects and have done some film shoots, and I've got one coming up, I think, on the 30th of this month. So December 30th, like, I've got a film shoot then, but most of the time during the day, what I do is product on white photography. I do a lot of that. So, like, somebody wants to sell a spoon on Amazon.com, and I work at a place called Insight Studios, and the lion's share of what we do is product on white photography. And
okay, so
I do product showcase videos. So like I think the latest one was a pop-up greeting card. And so like I did a video for a pop-up greeting card. So it's stuff like that.
okay. So you're still kind of in the business then.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
But I'm doing soul killing corporate work as opposed to, doing films.
Doing
but
the fun
do
stuff.
some films. I do some paying film work. So
Right. That's cool. Yeah, like my day job is as an IT guy.
okay.
So that's how I pay the bills. Yeah. And then
you
I
don't
also
want to delve too deep into making your passion your full-time job sometimes, because you'll get sick of it really quick. Don't do what you love full-time, because then you'll hate it.
Yeah. But at least, especially don't do, like, there was a time when I was a full-time musician, but I finally gave up on that and then went into the IT world 20 years ago. And like, I'm way happier now where I can kind of split the two things off, and
Yeah.
I can do music and do paid gigs in music, but it's not like I'm surviving off that. Now it's just gravy, and I'm just mostly doing it for the love of it. And then I can do the work. My IT job pays the bills. And I mean, it's not, fixing people's computers is it's you get to interact with a lot of people, so it does have some interest to it, but it's not nearly as rewarding as like composing music or playing violin or cello or doing these Star Trek stuff. This is the fun stuff, right?
Right.
So,
keep the fun stuff fun, though.
Right. Exactly.
So
that's really neat. Well, I'm glad I got to talk to you. I just have to cut it short because, I mean,
no problem.
You know me, we can just go on for hours.
You go on forever. You're a neat guy. So
yeah, I'm glad we got to hook up, and I'll look at some more of the Avalon stuff. And now that we can message each other, I can send you links or whatever if you ever need to collaborate with anything, or you want me to promote something.
You got it.
I'm building a pretty good Twitter presence, so at least.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've got 3,000 followers on Twitter now.
That's pretty good. That's more than I do.
It takes a lot, I've discovered.
I don't think I have any followers on Twitter.
Well,
other than I don't think I'm on it very much. I'd have to look at my own profile. I don't even know how many I have. Like 45.
Yeah. Basically,
I don't think I've posted anything in quite a while.
You don't automatically get followers. You got to put a lot of effort into it. And but I found a routine that works really, a magic formula that works really good.
You haven't tweeted in 3 years.
So. Yeah. The thing that works for me is if I see anybody that has Star Trek in their bio, I immediately follow them. And because I have Star Trek in my bio, 9 times out of 10, they'll follow me back.
There you go.
That's how I built all my followers. And the other cool thing is my Twitter universe is full of Star Trek fans.
Hey,
so
can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. So it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
It's been great having you. So I think it may be time to go back to family life, and I'm looking forward to all your new creations, and we can hook up again sometime and do another interview, or maybe you can interview me sometime on your channel.
Sounds good, man. All right. Thank you.
Take care. Live long and prosper.
Pranakasha production. Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life. For the benefit of all beings everywhere. We gotta change.